Hey, it's Sela Social Studies.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Sela Social Studies. This is part 3 of the Progressive Era, and we've talked about progressive politics, we've talked about the Progressive Era itself, and now we're going to be talking about muckrakers, raking muck. Well, what is muck? Muck, by definition, is dirt, rubbish, or waste matter. So it seems that a muckraker would be some sort of sanitation worker, someone who rakes muck. Well, that would be wrong. There were a number of people in a nation who were trying their hand at reform. The president and Congress passed laws to make things better, and city commissions and police brought safety and cleanliness into urban areas. However, in a previous section of this chapter, I had mentioned that it was muckrakers that answered the calls for reform and change America. But just who were some of these muckrakers and what exactly did they do? Muckrakers were a brave group of journalists, reporters, cartoonists, and photographers that exposed the evil injustices that were so grave that it made the blood of Americans boil. Muckrakers were here to right the wrongs of society. In 1904, an investigative journalist named Lincoln Stevens was working at McClure's magazine and published a story called The Shame of Cities, in which he attacked political machines and boss William Tweed. Also working at McClure's magazine was a female journalist named Ida Tarbell. Tarbell launched her attack on one of the largest monopolies in American history, the Standard Oil Company. She published a series of articles entitled The History of the Standard Oil Company, in which she outlined and documented the cutthroat business practices of John D. Rockefeller and his meteoric rise to the top using the horizontal integration approach to business. Rockefeller gobbled up his competition, hired cheap labor, and set market prices on refining oil. These articles became a book and have been highly praised as one of the most influential books ever published, and it was this book that contributed to the dissolution of the Standard Oil monopoly. This made Tarbell pleased because her father's business was driven under and gobbled up by Rockefeller and Standard Oil. And by this time in class, it should be common knowledge that industrialization and urbanization led to horrible living conditions in the cities. We have learned about tenements, long, narrow apartments with little airflow, few windows, and many people packed into small rooms, which spread filth and disease like wildfire. How'd we find out about what it was like in the tenements? The answer is Jacob Reese. Reese was a journalist and photographer who exposed the putrid conditions of urbanization in New York City apartments with a book named How the Other Half Lives. Reese would enter tenement houses at all hours, taking pictures of how the poor and destitute lived. Immigrants working all hours of the night to finish work left behind from the day, rooms with as many as 8 to 10 men sleeping in them, rooms that were shared, kitchen and bedroom. No bathrooms. Reese wanted to take these pictures to show Americans poverty at its purest form, filth and sadness that was plaguing the cities, and that not everyone in America was living the American dream. Reese's book is part of a much larger reform effort that attacked the problems of rapid industrialization and urbanization during the Progressive Era that stemmed from the Gilded Age. How the Other Half Lives helped lead the government regulations and the passing of the Tenement House Law in 1901 that mandated new construction that improved access to air, light, and water. It also led to improved sanitation regulations in all tenement buildings. The last thing we're going to cover here is yuck. Upton Sinclair was a muckraker whose book made its way all the way to President Theodore Roosevelt and provoked some serious change in American food processing. Sinclair wrote the book The Jungle, with the intended purpose to shed light on the horrendous effect of capitalism on the workers in the Chicago meatpacking industry and promote socialism. The unintended consequence was fury and sickness about the process, not the packers. In his account about the industry, Sinclair wrote about how workers sacrificed their fingers and nails by working with acid. Workers would also lose fingers, hands, and even arms or legs as a result of unsafe conditions, coupled with working long hours in cold, cramped conditions. Disease would run wild in the factories. And the worst was yet to come. Sinclair also wrote about the contents of the products that were being sold on store shelves to the American public. He noted that spoiled, rotten meat was doused with chemicals to hide the wretched smell. Skin, hair, stomach, ears, and nose were ground up and packaged as head cheese. There were unknown meats being packaged as beef products, and rats would crawl all over the warehouse meat, leaving piles of excrement, and if you don't know what that is, that's poop, on the meat. President Roosevelt originally discredited Sinclair in the book due to its basis in socialism, but changed course when he realized that it could actually be true. Some effects were seen within months of the release of this book when Congress passed the Pure Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act to reform and fix the abuses in the meatpacking industry. All right, we have one more section left in the Progressive Era, and I'll see you next time.